This is Chad Butler and his presentation on Alice and Bob lose their life savings. Give them a round of applause.
Thank you. All right. I was expecting like 5 people to show up. Are you guys sure you're in the right track? Okay. So I'm going to tell you about my friends, Alice and Bob, not their real names, trying to be sensitive to their anonymity because they lost a lot of money and it's sad. Before I kick off, I want to just say thank you. This is a great conference and I really appreciate the organizers, the sponsors, the volunteers and everybody that does so much to make this happen. So thank you. Also, this is an awesome InfoSec community. So I get to co-sponsor a monthly happy hour with my friends here in the front row, Tab and Catherine Pierce. And I've met some really amazing people. I came from Seattle about 4 years ago, and you guys are awesome. So shout out to you all and the CactusCon organizers. All right. So the obligatory who am I slide. I'm Chad. I've been here in Arizona for 4 years. I spent the first 23 years kind of climbing the corporate ladder. Had the opportunity to do some interesting things, work for interesting companies, and then the last stop on my tour of corporate USA, which is not on this slide for NDA reasons, I realized that ladder I was climbing was leaning against a wall that I really didn't want to be on top of. And so I tapped out, founded my own company called Mission InfoSec, and got twofold mission. One is to help organizations launch, build, operate secure products. To that end, I published the Product Security Playbook. It's a weekly newsletter that's free where I share some of my learnings over the years. I also do a little consulting. And then the other part of that is I'm trying to help develop the next generation of product security leaders and engineers. And I'm sure you've noticed there's some great training out there, but it's really, really expensive and it's not affordable for self-funded students. So that's my goal, is to provide that kind of training, but do it for a lot less and make it affordable for self-funded students. Also working on a startup that's in stealth mode with my friend Tab. And our goal is, it's kind of a moonshot, but we're trying to make breaches optional, which may seem like an impossibility, but we feel like it's worth working towards. So that's what we're doing. Okay, so let me jump into Alice and Bob's story. So introduction, Alice and Bob are retired. They're educated, super smart, super kind, hardworking people, some of the kindest people I've met. Bob worked as a German professor at a college here in Arizona, in this area, his entire career. They retired, they moved to northern Arizona to get away from the heat for a little bit, and then they moved back. We ended up in the same neighborhood together. So one day, Alice is working on her laptop at home, and an alert popped up. You've probably seen or heard of these before. Said her computer's compromised, gave her a phone number at Microsoft to call, and it was beeping loud. She couldn't make it go away. So she picked up the phone, called the number, and she got somebody on the other end of the phone who was being very helpful, seemed competent. He had her install a utility on her computer so that he could analyze it, right? And then he told her there were hackers connected to her computer, listening, watching everything that she said and did. And he asked her, do you have any accounts, any money that you need to be concerned about? She said they did. They had retirement accounts. So he said, this is above my pay grade. I need to escalate to the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission. So he said, stay by your phone. They're going to call you in a few minutes. Stay there and they'll take care of you. So a few minutes later, the phone rang. The caller on the other end of the line said his name was Agent David Mole with the FTC. Incidentally, if you Google David Mole FTC, you get this first hit, which links David Mole, FTC, and spyware, at least those keywords. Certainly doesn't say he's an agent, but if you were doing a little bit of checking, this is what you would come up with. Agent Mole had a very authoritative, calming voice. He told Alice the line was recorded and it's imperative that you tell the full truth. You cannot lie at all. She said that's not a problem. She's a very truthful person, very honest. And then he went through and he verified her identity using the same kind of like knowledge-based answer questions you'd hear from a bank. What's the name of your elementary school, your mother's maiden name? What was the make and model of your first car? And then when he was satisfied that he was actually speaking with Alice, he said, Earlier that day, federal agents had raided a house in Texas. And unfortunately, the criminals escaped before they arrived, but they found inside the house there was evidence of money laundering and child pornography, distribution, creation, everything. And they said, unfortunately, it gets worse. They found out that they were using your identity to do these activities. Alice, of course, freaked out. She began to explain she would never do any of these things. And Agent Mole said, well, I believe you, but there's a federal prosecutor and a federal judge assigned to the case now, and you're going to have to convince them. She got this very convincing letter from the IRS. It had the last 4 digits of her social on there, correct address, all those things. And Agent Mole said she had 2 options. She could do nothing, and what would happen is that her financial accounts would be frozen. She couldn't use her social security number, and that would happen for 3 to 5 years. Her accounts would be frozen for 3 to 5 years as that investigation ensued. Or, in addition to that, she would have to pay lawyers to work to clear her name and unfreeze her accounts. Or the second option was Agent Mole could help her move her money to a government secured account where it would sit in safety while they recreated a new social security number for her, at which point she could take ownership of those assets again. So Alice chose the second option. Agent Mole called her every day to give her an update and kind of give her instructions. And at one point, he put her on the line with somebody that he claimed was the federal prosecutor in charge of the case. That federal prosecutor had her sign this NDA, and he stressed, you have to keep this completely confidential. If she broke the NDA, she would be held criminally responsible for what happened. He reiterated that she was a part of a federal prosecution and investigation and that she could be held responsible. If anyone asked, she was supposed to lie. So with that, Agent Mole began the process of helping Alice move the money to the supposed government secured account. He had her go to her local bank and withdraw $30,000 in cash. And then he coached her. He said, the bank is probably going to ask you, why do you need this money? And she was supposed to tell them that her son was buying a house, needed it for a down payment, and they were loaning it to him. Next, he told her to put the $100 bills between pages of a book and put those in a box, fill it in with T-shirts. And then she was supposed to take that to a UPS store, the one on Queen Creek Road, and ship it. And he gave her this address, Ricky Leo, at some CVS in New York City. So she did exactly what she was supposed to do. She took a picture of the box, she took a picture of the tracking number, sent it to some random Gmail address, and it was gone. Now, quick aside, pay attention to this mailing label here and this address. It's gonna come up later, a little plot twist in the end. So next step was Agent Mole told her to buy some gold. There's a reason gold is called the gold standard, or we call it the gold standard, right? And that's what we're gonna use to make sure your money is safe. So she called a place called JM Bullion, and she was supposed to buy 2 1-kilogram gold bars. And he prepped her for this. He said, the salesman on the line is going to ask you if anybody is directing you to make this purchase. And you're just supposed to say no. Don't offer any explanations, just say no. So she did that, and JM Bullion did that. They were great. In fact, they went a step further. They said there have been recent increases in scams involving gold purchases, and they asked her point blank, is a government agency asking you to buy this? And then they listed a list of government agencies who had done this or who had been used in these scams, including the FTC. And at this point, Alice, being an honest person, she wanted to say yes, but then she remembered she was being investigated. And if she said anything, she could be held criminally liable. She said no. They insisted, if you turn this gold over to a third party, there's nothing we or anyone else can do to get it back. They did the right thing. But unfortunately, the scammers anticipated this, and they did all of the right things or the wrong things to make it so that she would say no and continue this purchase. So the gold arrived, and one day Agent Mole calls and says, Alice, look outside. There's a government courier parked in front of your house. You're going to walk outside. You're going to go alone. You're going to walk down your driveway. There's going to be a sedan there with its parking lights on. The rear window is down. And I want you to walk down to the car, open the back door, put the gold package on the seat, shut the door, and go back inside. And he said, you're not supposed to talk to or look at the driver. Don't engage with the driver in any way. So she did exactly as she was instructed. Next step, more gold. This time 2 10-ounce bars and 1 1-ounce bar. Gold arrived, handoff procedure went exactly the same, separate, different driver, different car. So at this point, the value of the gold that had been whisked away by these government couriers was almost $275,000. So next up, Agent Mole had her withdraw $10,000, and she went to the Arco gas station on Cooper Street, just south of the 202, and there was this Athena Bitcoin ATM, and he gave her a QR code to make the transfer. She did that. Incidentally, this is the actual ATM. I went there the other night, and I was looking to see if there's any indication or any warning. This picture on the right was kind of posted on the side of that, but if you can tell, there's like a chest freezer, and you almost had to lean over this chest freezer to see it. So Chandler police, like they tried, there was an attempt, but I didn't see it. I saw it because I was looking for it to see if it was there. Nobody's going to see this thing, unfortunately. Okay, so at this point, all of their money's gone, but there was a problem. That original $30,000 cash that was sent from the UPS store, well, it didn't arrive. And so Agent Mole said, go back to the UPS store, find out what happened. She did. There was a young guy working at the front desk. He took her information, didn't understand what he was seeing, so he called his manager up. And the manager looked at it and started to ask Alice all sorts of questions. What was in the box? What was it worth? Who were you shipping it to? Why were you shipping it to them? All of these questions. And then finally he said, package is lost. Sorry, don't know what happened. I can help you fill out a loss claim, and you'll be refunded $100 or something like that. And so she went back to Agent Mole, asked for his advice. He said, go back and tell him that you were opening a police investigation, a police report, and see what happens. She did. And at that point, the UPS store manager came clean. He said, actually, the package is here. It's in the back. It was scanned at a post office in the Midwest somewhere, and they found cash in it and reported it to the FBI and then returned it. And so at this point, I'm like, WTF, UPS store manager, was this early Christmas bonus, or what were you thinking here? So he took her to the back. They started going through they opened the package together. And as they were doing that, he told Alice that he actually recognized this address. He had seen it before. So think about it. Somebody who spends all day looking at shipping addresses, this one he recognized, which tells me that it's happening a lot more often to a lot more people than we know. So they took the package home. They counted the money. It was $100 short. Somebody helped themselves to a tip somewhere along the line. But at this point, I'm pretty sure Agent Mole knew he was burned. And so he started to explain to Alice how to transfer that $30,000 or $30,000 minus $100 with an ATM machine, a standard ATM machine. But he was no longer, this calm, collected voice of reason. He seemed frazzled, and Alice was having trouble understanding him. And so at one point he said, look, it's been a long day. Let's wrap it up tonight. I will call you tomorrow at 10:30 and we'll go over this again. We'll figure this out. So that happened. They went, they said goodbye. Call never came. 10:30 came around, call never came. Alice tried to reach out to him on the number that he had given her. No answer. She tried texting him, no response. So at that point, Alice began to realize that Agent Mole was not working for the FTC. He was a scammer, and they had just lost their entire life savings, almost $300,000. So they all live happily ever after, right? No. Unfortunately, no happy ending yet. Alice filed a police report. They told her that they would report it to the FBI, but the FBI was not going to investigate it. There's just too many of these. And of course, you and I know, no investigation, no subpoena. Without a subpoena, you can't get the call records and email records. You would need to trace it back to these people. And even if you could, they're probably foreign citizens, operating internationally, and you could probably only really prosecute the moles. And they were probably part of the scam too. I'm guessing they didn't know that they were transporting gold. They probably just responded to a job posting that sounded too good to be true. And they were operating unbeknownst that they were falling for this scam as well. Now, you might be thinking there were lots of red flags in this. How could you miss those? And I want to share some thoughts or some things that we can do. First of all, when I started this, I had an assumption that the older generation fell for these types of scams more frequently than the younger generation. And I found that that wasn't true. In fact, the younger generation, under 60, fall for these scams in 2021, 34% more likely. And that trend, unfortunately, continues. I looked at the data, the FTC data in 2023, and for the under 60 population, there were 3 times as many reports as the over 60 generation. Now, the over 60 generation were losing more money per incident, but still, the younger generation falls for these more often. So I think that's the first thing to recognize, is that we are all vulnerable to these types of scams. It has nothing to do with how smart you are, how paranoid you are, how security aware you are. It comes down to basic psychology and evolution. What do I mean by that? Well, scammers know exactly what to say to manipulate our emotions and our psychology. They know words will trigger strong negative emotions. For Alice, this was, you're under investigation for child pornography and money laundering. Your accounts are going to be frozen. All of those things cause these, the mental state to change. And when that happens, our rational brains hand over the car keys to the irrational parts of our brain to do whatever they want, right? And it's part of that evolution, how we survive. It's the fight or flight response. And so when smart people do foolish things, it's often because their rational brain isn't in control. Their logical brains are not in control. And scammers know that, and they use that against us. So what can we do? What I'm going to recommend is this thing called, I'm calling it the Gumby Challenge because you need a cute name, right? Gumby has been around forever. The first movie was made in the 50s, and I think the most recent one was like 10 years ago or something like that. So I first heard about Gumby engineering when I was at AWS. And the idea goes something like this. So you're working on a difficult engineering challenge, a troubleshooting issue. You're trying all of these things, you work on it for hours, and then finally, you kind of drop your pride and you go and ask somebody, or you post on a forum or whatever. And oftentimes, as you're in the process of explaining that, it sparks inspiration. And you think of either the solution or something else that you can go try, and you go and do that, right? And so the idea of Gumby engineering is it doesn't actually have to be a person. If you have some inanimate object, a Gumby sitting on your desk, you can talk to it as you're troubleshooting. And oftentimes verbalizing what you're doing will lead to solutions. This works really well for scams. In fact, I think one of the most important things people can do is have a trusted friend that they can reach out to talk to before taking action. And so what they find, or what has been observed, is that when people reach out to a trusted friend and they start to talk about this situation, whether it's a money scam or an investment scam, grandparent scam, romance scam, as they're talking through it and they hear themselves talking about the scenario, something clicks and they realize, I'm being scammed, and it shuts it down. And so my challenge is twofold. Gumby challenge. First of all, who can you call? Who's your trusted friend? Because remember, we're all vulnerable to these types of things. I can tell you about purchases that I've made that turned out to be fraudulent. It was too good to be true. I made it anyway. It was like under $100 that I lost, so not that big of a deal. But everybody is vulnerable. So have somebody that you can reach out to talk to. The second part, and I think the most important part, I suspect every person in this room is the de facto IT support for some member of your family or friends or whatever, right? And that makes, you're in the perfect situation to be that person for somebody else. So if you'll accept this challenge, I want you to reach out to that person or those people and encourage them to call you, before they move money, before they meet that spicy Latin lover that they met online yesterday or whatever. Call you and tell you what you're doing, or tell you what they're doing and what they're going through. Now, I realize we're not going to stop all of the scams all of the time, but we can stop some of them. And more importantly, we can stop the ones for the people that mean the most to us. And so I hope you'll join me. Gumby Challenge, right? All right, that's it. So here's some additional resources here. The Rose Advocacy Group is a local nonprofit here in Phoenix, and they're dedicated to helping specifically seniors So there's some really good resources there. They will come and talk to a group and provide education like this. Really awesome stuff. The FTC has a consumer group that there's some really good stuff on that page as well. You can reach me at my website there if you want to get in touch with me. And then I also co-host a happy hour, like I said at the beginning. And we've got the next one coming up. If you're interested in joining us there, it's an awesome experience. No agenda, no sales, just a great opportunity to get together and meet new people. Okay, that's it. Thanks, everyone.